Today we're putting the Master into Dungeon Master in a true masterclass video from Jacob, XP to level 3. He made a video recently that doesn't have a single piece of advice in it, but it might just be the best single video I've ever seen on showing how to be an amazing Dungeon Master. Jacob's XP to level 3 is one of the largest YouTube channels out there, so you probably already know who I'm talking about if you're seeing this video. He is known for being funny and making skits, and does he do that masterfully? Yes. But does the guy have it? He's got it up here as far as Dungeon Master goes. He made a video called How Different Players Make Characters, showing how 4 different players at a table, which also, side note, I really did feel like it was 4 different people at that table. He did a good job of altering himself slightly for these 4 different kinds of players, and then him himself as a Dungeon Master, how he changed and twisted and added things for that player specifically. It honestly blew my mind, even maybe just from a content creation standpoint, because whenever I give advice and tips, I just say them, and I would say and do all these different things, but man, he showed it. He showed how it is, and a lot of the subtleties that you might not catch, or I could tell you a tip and then, okay, cool, you can try and apply it. But seeing it in action was amazing. And like I said, not a single thing was said in that video. It was all shown. And man, oh man, there's some subtleties that I want y'all to kind of notice and then see. So we're basically doing a film breakdown, true dungeon coach style, breaking down some D&D film of seeing the subtleties in action here and what we can learn from it. We're gonna watch some clips together, then break it down. Let's go.
I think I'm gonna make my strength. Well, Lysafel was born into a militaristic family, and he was trained as a soldier from birth, and he had to do it very quickly as well, because Karnath being Karnath, you know, they need soldiers for their ever-growing military. But now that it's after the war, and he's been traveling the entire world, experiencing lots of different things, and especially searching after his fiancée who went MIA after the war, you know, yeah, that 16's going in perception.
The story writer. This character, this player is in their characters' heads always. And you can just see where that stat goes, where this goes, where am I putting the 16. They aren't thinking of it from a combat perspective of what type of modifiers and other things they have. They are thinking from it from the story, and they're looking, and they need high perception to be able to find, and they put it down there. So keep this in mind, because this character, as we go around the table, and how the Dungeon Master adjusts for him. Watch.
I'm going Warforged Paladin for the first 2 levels, and then for 3rd and 4th, I'm going to go Artificer. I'm going to get the Infuse item Enhanced Defense, and put that on my shield, which I get for being a Paladin. I also get Chainmail for being a Paladin. I also get a +1 for being a Warforged, so 20 AC. And I've got a bag holding. I'm gonna play a Barbarian. Oh, really? Why? I want to hit stuff. And what are you gonna play? Wizard. Oh, cool. Why? Magic seems cool. Alright, that's fair. So, Lysafel is traveling with Dave. Dave, the wizard, and
roleplay.
Mephistopheles. Oh gods. And
still in character.
Brick. Alright, Brick. Locating somebody in Sharn with an...
This type of player dives into that roleplay. They're already in the roleplay with their own character, and they draw others in. Use that. Tap into that. That's the way they're playing the game, and let them draw in those other players and kind of pull them out of their shell to maybe to roleplay a bit more, to connect with their character a bit more. By no means do I mean every person at the table should play the same, or at some point eventually blend together and have everyone be the same version across the board of balance. No, everyone's going to have their key points that they want to really do, which we're about to showcase. Time out. Man, oh man, is this video for Dungeon Masters. We have Jacob showing us visually how to be a better Dungeon Master. And then we have another content creator, Luke Hart from the DM Lair, showing us how to be a better Game Master through text in his brand new Kickstarter, The Secret Art of Game Mastery. This video is not even sponsored, because us content creators have to stick together, and Luke is really trying to help you guys become better Game Masters with The Secret Art of Game Mastery. Has 100 years of combined experience from himself and his team on Game Master tips and advice in over 250 pages in this book. I am all about decreasing prep time, and so is Luke, and this thing is going to decrease your prep time for sure, with a ton of tips and tricks for creating full adventures, one-shots, and all sorts of engaging adventures for your players that can engage all types of players like we're talking about in this video. This book is for a wide range of Game Masters, from brand new Game Masters that want to learn the ropes to be able to even just run games in general, all the way up from all this experience for those veteran Dungeon Masters to really want to take their games to the next level. It covers all three pillars of the game of combat, exploration, social encounters, and how to run those things. You'll be able to create things from scratch or polish off and add to adventures not only easier, but in less time. So check that link down in the description and unlock all those secrets in the secret art of game mastery. All right, let's get back to the breakdown. So I cut out the part where this character starts talking about backstory and seeing if anyone else has any sorts of backstory nuggets that maybe the story could find, who's coming after them, because this player has turned in a backstory that has certain pieces going around. And there is some sort of meta understanding that if you have a backstory and things and you give it to a good dungeon master, they should take those things and plug that into the game. You know, that you would hope so, at least. So that's all we missed out on here, but let's see what the dungeon master does with it.
Okay, seems like you guys have your characters ready. Let's go ahead and jump into the game. I need everybody to roll initiative.
Ooh, great way to start combat. Great way to start an encounter.
In a meeting between factions.
Oh.
You are all
Sad
at this
for
meeting
him.
because you were called to be bodyguards. And as you guys are scanning the entire room, you notice that one of the council members is acting very strangely. He writhes and twitches when suddenly his skin cracks open and he transforms into a giant demon.
Ooh, he's back in now.
Picks up another council member, throws him out of the room, and begins attacking everybody.
Interesting. Sabotaging a meeting like this does not bode well for the other houses. I mean,
Roleplay.
if the fights continue like this, they won't continue to meet, and they'll just erupt into chaos. Somebody who orchestrated this must be outside.
This is great right here, watch.
In fact, as you realize this, Lysafel, you notice that there is another individual in the back of the room who is doing their best to try to avoid eye contact and get out as quickly as possible. And you notice that they have a pendant that is similar to yours.
My backstory!
Yes, this is massive. This is so important. I know this is a video that we're breaking down, but I'm saying that dungeon master in this moment, in this hypothetical game that they're playing, that dungeon master would not have said what they just said. They might not have even added that NPC in there if this player didn't say and do that type of role play. I can't tell you how many times this happened to me where I see a player start to role play in some way, start to ask a question. Do I see or notice anybody that for something with their backstory, something from some connection that they've made in the game that I forgot I prepped the game and I had this cool combat that I made, but I forgot about, what do I see the person from previous sessions or my backstory or whatever? And because of that role play, because of that player, this player asking that question and having that role play moment, you know what? You do see a cloaked figure in the back of the thing and they have a pendant and they're like, oh my God, my backstory. And that player is now on cloud 9. They are hook, line, and sinkered in there. Even that starting description is there's factions at war. Talking to that player, there's factions, there's bigger pieces going on. And there's a demon that busts out and oh my God. And now the player that wants to hit stuff can go hit stuff. Both of them are excited. The little tip to take away in my interpretation of this is that dungeon master would not have said that if the player didn't start to go down that path. So if players start to engage with certain pieces of the world, let that open up and explore and add in things on the fly even. If a player's like, what's behind this bush? I really think there could be something down this path. Maybe there is something down the path. And we've all had this happen where players will say certain things at the table and like they'll talk and strategize amongst each other about what they think might happen and take some notes from that and plug it in. Back to it.
He turns out, scans the room, and then goes back into the crowd to try to escape. And for that brief glimpse that you saw his face, you swear he looked almost exactly like your fiance.
What? I joined the fight. I'm going after him. I have so many questions.
Going into initiative, though, Dave, you are first.
What should I do? Best option would probably be to do as much damage as possible on that demon. Do you have magic missile?
Dave, do whatever you want.
Thank you. Okay, so at my game table, we call this quarterbacking. Whenever one player starts to tell another player what to do, no. You know, so if you want to help, there's good and bad power gamers, right? There's the power gamers that well, this is kind of in general a good idea. I like it personally whenever the power gamers, because I do have some at my table, but they are good versions of this where they provide multiple options. I know, careful with this because that means this, and they give them the options. But I am always the arbiter of choice and like, what would your character do? And your character might not be the most optimal thing or whatever. And I try and be the neutral party to let them know what would you do. And this player, as I feel them out, especially if it's a new player, which in this story that we're talking about here, that character is a brand new player. They don't know what they're doing. So I give them options of like, what would your character do? And then over time, as that player figures out how they have the most fun in the game, I might poke them into roleplay moments, poke them into optimization, and they will evolve into a power gamer or role player or whatever. So great job here by Jacob as the dungeon master in this hypothetical game to, hey, do whatever you want to do.
I have this spell called Detect Thoughts. Can I read the thoughts of the demon?
I love this stuff.
Is
None of this happens. Oh my God.
As you do so, you peer into the
Dungeon
mind of
Master.
the demon. This warped language that you barely understand reverberates through your mind. This deep abyssal, but slowly begins to sort of make sense in your mind, like you're reading almost the emotions, the feelings of this demon. And what immediately comes to you first is that he's smart and he's strategizing. He's scanning the room, but he's looking to cause as much chaos as possible, but on purpose.
Yeah. Is he thinking about who he's going to attack next?
He's going for Brick next.
So that is interesting. I don't know if a brand new player like that would ask about like, oh, is he going for this next? But that Dungeon Master dove into what that player did and made it cool. Like they might not make it some like detect thoughts. Come on, there's no way. You know, the power gamer rolls their eyes, right? But the Dungeon Master took an opportunity of a moment to make something cool. Now, a lot of Dungeon Masters might not have the experience or the confidence in themselves on the fly to come up with stuff like this, but this is exactly the type of stuff that I want to do and I look to do to be able to have these interesting moments where a player uses a spell in maybe a way it's not intended, but with an intent that's not necessarily broken, and it's obviously there's other things they could have done more optimally, but they're using a spell in a creative way and give them a benefit from it, and you'll see.
I tell Brick,
As you're preparing to fight this demon, you hear a warning from across the room, Dave telling you that he's going to attack you next. You prepare yourself, and because of that, I'm going to give you a +1 to your AC until the start of your next turn.
oh, yes!
The demon is next. It's going to go straight for you.
Now, I love this in my moment right here when I'm watching this is maybe my favorite part of the entire video is this moment. And when in my head immediately, I do this all the time as a Dungeon Master, and a random piece of advice for Dungeon Masters is anytime I watch Critical Role, Dimension 20, any sort of actual plays, even this little moment right here, I immediately, what would I do as a Dungeon Master? If something happens, what would be my interpretation? I'll pause videos, I'll stop and think, what would I do, right? And it's a challenging thing to see what your idea is, and then you hear what happens, and you can decide on which one you like better, and maybe it's yours, maybe it's theirs, who knows? My thought in my head immediately was disadvantage. It was as if that player, through casting the Detect Thoughts spell, which burns a spell slot, that takes their action, all this stuff, right? I would say that they gave the dodge action to this other player, right? Which would be disadvantage on all attacks, which is technically better than +1 to AC. I think that would be what I would do in this little on the fly moment of coming up with something, because it's an in-game mechanic of dodge and it gives disadvantage. And then of course, whenever you make an attack roll behind the screen, you're going to be able to have a similar moment to what you see here. But the chances of that moment happening is, you'll see what I'm talking about with armor class, but we'll get to that once it happens.
It's going to go straight for you, Brick. It's going to get you with a horn attack, and then it's going to use its multi-attack for 2 claw attacks as well.
Oh boy.
First one's 17.
Miss.
19.
Miss.
20. Dirty 20.
That would hit. If I didn't have the +1!
And then
It's your turn!
I smite this fool!
I smite this fool. Yes. Oh man. So we all know we've had that moment at the table where somebody does something and it comes down to just that one, right? So super epic moment. The reason why the Detect Thoughts came around and it worked. Now I would say again in my thought here, again, by no means am I saying that it should be this or should be that a certain way, but these are the types of things I want y'all to think about. Is that 1 AC would be very hard to have be that hit. Like they would have to literally roll that exact number for that to matter. That's why in general, whenever players do something like this, try and think of things that would make sure that it matters in some way, whether it be temporary hit points that always for sure will matter, or instead of things might not mattering, right? Because if he rolls way too low or way too high, it's not going to hit that 1. But disadvantage on 3 attacks. Oh, wow, that's crazy. Even if you just give disadvantage on 1 attack, you could roll the disadvantage and be like, oh, well, I rolled a 19 and a 3. So there you go. And the Detect Thoughts matters. Yay, right? And then there's another little thing here of my hypothetical wonderings behind the screen of this hypothetical Dungeon Master is, did he lie? You know what I'm saying? There's so many times, and it's up to you if this is something that you feel is okay or not okay for Dungeon Master to do. That's not what we're talking about, if this is good or bad. But that Dungeon Master could have lied and said 17 and 19, and maybe those 2 rolls were legit. And whatever that third roll was, he could have just ignored it and said 20. Whether you not think that's a Dungeon Master sin or not, he says 20, and then he makes that happen. And what are the chances? What are the odds? And he chose this 1 to armor class, and it went up, and it's exactly 20. Oh my God! And there's that moment, right? Now, if that's worth it to you at the table, or I don't know, but that is definitely what that Dungeon Master, that this hypothetical Dungeon Master could have done. But either way, the detect thoughts being cast and it mattering is the big picture and the absolute favorite moment of this entire video. Absolutely love it.
I smite this fool! That one off the table. That's a 22 to hit. Roll damage! He's also a fiend, so I can add an extra D8. While you're giving me damage, remember to stop, please. It's your turn. I am too far from the demon. Is there anything else I can hit? Yeah, you turn.
Freeze. Okay, so a couple of things here, and this is what I'm talking about. He is showing us how to be a great Dungeon Master instead of saying it. So I'm going to say it right here for him. Is that player, the optimization player? You know that he is a paladin and all this stuff with the mindset. So if a fiend adds extra bonus because I'm a paladin and the extra bonuses, and you know how they're building their character. You know that if a character's prone or if a character's this, so you start to have things in the game like fiends in this case to gain those bonuses that they're trying to optimize around. So that player, check. The player that has no idea what they're doing, casting detect thoughts randomly, which would have been useless, huge check because they gave him a bonus for it. Then the player wants to optimize and he gives them a fiend to be able to have an optimized damage for this fiend. And then this next player wants to hit stuff, right? That's their entire thing. They want to hit stuff. And then they say like, oh, I want to hit stuff and I'm too far away to make the attack. And then out of nowhere, this Dungeon Master does this.
Turn around and you watch as a number of dark portals open, and spilling out of them are a bunch of demonic reinforcements. I hit stuff! Tell me, does the blood of Vol still run through your veins? King Caius sends his regards. And you notice your fiancé that you hold before you. There's this unnerving twitch about him. His mouth droops open and his eyes are this deep yellow. He's undead. No! Oh, it's actually so cool. Oh my god.
Yes.
Can I cast enlarge on the demon? What?
Optimization,
well,
what?
Maybe if it's bigger, then it's easier to hit. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's still gonna be stronger, but I'm gonna reduce its AC by 5. Yes!
Love it. Exactly what I would do.
And deal 55 damage. He hasn't even landed a hit.
Look at this. I'm so excited for all these 4 hypothetical players, right? The guy that just wants to hit stuff, we'll get to him in a second. He had things spawn out of nowhere, not within some sort of initiative turn. And there's been times where that I would say to do this. Now, sometimes that like, oh, well, what initiative would those ads spawn on or whatever. So maybe in that case, the only adjustment I would say, or watch out for Dungeon Masters, is it might feel bad or cringy or whatever if a player's like, oh, I don't really have anything to do. And then you, out of nowhere, on their turn, technically, spawn things on them to be able to have stuff to do. That might feel a little bit bad. So what I would also say in this moment is you could look at things like knowing that that's coming and seeing the whole battlefield, the battle map goes down and you see what's going on, and that player that just wants to hit stuff. We all have seen that, man, that melee barbarian is really far away from anything. That's going to be rough. And then you could, on a layer action, on initiative 10, on the initiative right before theirs, and you lie and make up an initiative that goes right before the barbarian where ads spawn. Yes. Try and look for that beforehand, before the player says, oh no, I can't do anything. And if you do something right then, you might have to, that might feel a little bit bad, so careful with that. But the barbarian is able to go and smash stuff. The role player is grabbing people, role playing with them, and they see these things and these story bits unfold. That's what their turn's all about. I just got chills thinking about their story unfolding, of how they are seeing their former, this person from their backstory, and these clues and stories and factions and all these stuff. That player is on cloud 9. The barbarian's about to smash stuff. He's hyped up. This paladin is getting advantages from other players playing not optimally, that this player has no idea what they're doing and they're just playing, and the Dungeon Master is rolling with it, almost helping to make the mechanics of stuff work. Dungeon Master stepping in to help those type of players helps the whole table, because it is very frustrating for other players at the table if you have power gamers, or even just in general, and you've balanced the encounter a certain way. If one player is wasting their turns, imagine if a Dungeon Master ran this off normally. They cast Detect Thoughts, you hear some thoughts, nothing happens, and you go to the next person. And then they cast Enlarge, which is literally literally like hurting the whole party, buffing the boss, and then they say something like, "Oh, I think it'd be easier to hit," and you're like, "No, that's not how the spell works," and then you keep going, and now they just gave a buff. That player might quit. That player might quit the games. And not only might that player not quit the game, you are forcing them to play a game, a role play game with infinite possibilities. You're forcing them to play a game like oh, by the rules. And I respect the rules and all that kind of stuff. But think about this a little bit. Maybe the other players around the table can start to gain these bonuses from this player playing in this interesting way. You get challenged as a dungeon master and kind of have to flex your creative muscles a little bit to be able to keep up with this player that doesn't know what they're doing and kind of help facilitate. And yes, that player over time will understand how the game works, will understand the rules and what's more so supposed to happen. But hopefully through you being a creative dungeon master and them having the options to do stuff and think outside the box, as we always do here on this channel, that is huge. And I absolutely love that. All of the interactions with this new player are my favorite in the whole thing. When I'm going to enlarge and he drops the AC by 5, 100% exactly what I would have done. Absolutely love it. And then this paladin optimizer is critting. I did 55 damage, and the hype at the table is intense. I feel it in this made up video that I feel all 4 players are on cloud 9. Literally all of them, for all different reasons. Let's get back.
He hasn't even landed a hit on you, and you send him right back to where he came from. I'm kicking demons off the tower. Roll athletics.
I have advantage because I'm raging. 17.
3 of the demons fall away.
Is that how
into the
athletics
city
works?
below,
Oh, 3 of them.
screeching in abyssal.
Mephistopheles will remember this name. Yeah, you will.
I love that you all play differently.
That's the video. The ending, I was like, no, I wanted to keep going. It was so good. Oh man, like the fact that I feel so excited, and I would go watch the video, like it, to make sure you subscribe. I mean, obviously all that stuff. Jacob makes some great stuff, but this was so well done on the feel at the table and the why. I had to make a video on the why. This dungeon master in this made up video is masterfully hitting every single dial on all of those players. That barbarian made an athletics check. Technically that's against one creature to make the shove action, and you'd have to move and be able to get to a win. Like, cinematic as hell, right? Now, the asterisk that I would make sure to say here is make sure that you're consistent and that everything just doesn't feel arbitrary and random to where like, when this barbarian makes athletics checks, it applies to 3 things, and then everything, the rules are just all over the place, you know what I'm saying? But the principles here are a 10 out of 10, 100% spot on. You can describe things as being a horde of little goblins or whatever, and then you represent them by 1 token, and you grapple them and you grab them all and you're throwing them out the window, all that kind of stuff, right? And you can also add cinematic moments like this in a combat where the boss goes down and the boss is killed, but there's a bunch of little minions around. Let players describe what they do with it. I have a whole mechanic that I haven't done a video on this before, but a white flag, wave the white flag mechanic, where after the boss is killed and it looks like they're obviously going to win, I just say like, guys, how does this combat end? And like, you know, you have the whole, how do you want to do this for the boss kill, and let that player who killed the boss, in this case the min-max paladin, really device by spell, you describe that moment, and then and now everything else, the goblins start to run, everything's you guys have you're victorious. How does it look like as y'all finish this up? What is everybody doing? And then you open it up to let them make checks, and that barbarian that's surrounded by guys be like, give me an athletics check for all those rest of those goblins, and then like, oh, they 17, how do you throw them out the window? That's exactly how I would do it in that situation, where a cinematic moment happens, they have beat the encounter, how do you clean it up? Instead of keeping them in combat, keeping them in initiative order, and then, you know, whatever else happens. They've won, they beat it, and let the wrap up happen, because I hate when the moment where the big huge boss ends, and then they have a couple of minions, and you have to keep the combat going for like a round or 2, and that's just not, you know, end it on that high note, you know what I'm saying? So now the barbarian's throwing stuff off, they're killing it. The role play guy is inspired, and it's in all the investment he had into his backstory is seen at the table through combat role play moments, through character interaction role play moments. The new person is trying stuff, and the dungeon master is spotting them and helping them to grow and eventually fly on their own and have ideas that are a bit more, you know, that would work more naturally, instead of the dungeon master having to facilitate. And then you have the min-maxer who's just optimized and doing this thing and then having these moments. Do they always have to? No. And I would love to see the next combat to where you could have that spotlight go. This was masterfully shown as a spotlight going around the table, right? But sometimes there might be a combat designed for role player, designed for min-max, or designed for, well, whatever, right? To make them feel heroic or make them feel, you know, like they have to work their way up. So huge props to Jacob in this video. I absolutely loved it so much to where I had to go make my own after this and talk about some of these things and some of the nuance to all the stuff he was showing how to do. And props to Luke, and go check out his Kickstarter, link down in the description for that, on Dungeon Master. Got all of this is just us as content creators, and I love Jacob, love Luke, and all the stuff we do, and that's what I try and do here to help you guys as well. Us content creators are just trying to help you guys with your games, give you guys the confidence that you deserve to have behind the helm as a Dungeon Master, and lower the prep time, all that kind of stuff, with different sort of books and modules to help out, and Jacob showing y'all how it's done, all of the big picture to help everybody stay creative, think outside the box. Peace.